Hey Rob, this is Dion here. Excited to be working with you. Lots of good stuff to work on. Also appreciate you kind of talking about some of the stuff that you've already been addressing, like the coast in between as you come off the throttle and attack the brakes, and things like that, which is fantastic. So where I'm going to really focus most of my energy and time today is me really focused on how and when we're really picking up the throttle and really focus on that technique, because I'm a big believer on that being the foundation of which we build our driving off of. So let's start kind of going through here, right? And as you mentioned in your video, hey, this lap we overslowed turn one a little bit, no harm, no foul. It happens, right? But what you do well on this lap in turn one is you don't let that overslowing really result in too much of an early throttle application. You come in, you're like, okay, crap, I've overslowed, but you remain patient to throttle. Now, the one thing that it does cause is a really aggressive throttle application, right? So if I were to kind of show you here what your throttle application looks like, and this is a little bit evident in other areas as well, we start to break into the throttle right now, and within half a car length, we go from 0% throttle to nearly 80% throttle. So your throttle trace looks something like this, and then we kind of slowly get back to full throttle. What I'd like to see your throttle trace look like is actually something that looks a little bit more like this, right? So the way most cars work is that first, 30, 40% of the throttle is actually where most of the power is delivered, right? The last 10% of throttle does less, but adds less power than the first 10% of throttle. So you get away with this really aggressive throttle application because we're under the limit of the car. But as you start to work on rolling more and more and more entry speed, you're going to need a little bit more progressive of a throttle, because that type of weight transfer is going to completely upset the rear. It's going to snap on you, and you're going to feel like you're at the limit of the car, but that snap's actually coming because you just transferred weight way too quickly. So I still want you to be trying to commit back to full throttle as early as possible, but we need to be a little bit smoother with how we deliver that throttle so we're not upsetting the rear, right? So coming in here, and it's what it should look like is I'm going to kind of, every corner is different, every car is different, the conditions can change, right? So take this as a grain of, with some grains of salt, and kind of a typical rule, right, would be like cracking the throttle now. I'm 10%, I'm like 30%. I would probably be like 60%, 90%, and then 100% somewhere out over here, right? So still relatively fast, 0% to 100% in 3 car lengths or so, but notice how it's just a little bit more progressive. Now, again, I want to combine that with more entry speed, right? Those are the two critical things coming together. All righty. So coming up over here into turn 3, mostly like the way that you attack the brakes into turn 3. Coming in, right, pretty late on the brakes here, hard on the brakes, hard as you are here as you are to turn 1, which I like. But I'd like to see you shifting our brake zone to come even deeper into the corner. So let's talk a little bit about turn 3, right? In a corner like this, we're trying to sacrifice a bit of speed through 3 to really set up for turn 4. So in corners like this, it's even more important to delay our throttle and maybe even trail brake deeper into the corner. Because when you think about this, right, what are we trying to achieve here? We're trying to achieve rotation. I'm asking my car to rotate so that with more speed, I can get it and keep it to the inside. So what ends up happening here is you're starting to apply the throttle right now. And you, at this point in the corner, we're still asking that front end to turn, right? Like you want to continue to turn left at this point. So what happens here is right at this moment where your hands, your body are asking the car to keep turning, your feet get to throttle, which shifts the weight off the front end, where the weight goes where the grip goes. So by shifting weight off the front end, you reduce that front grip. So now your feet, your body, and your hands are all working against each other. So by getting the throttle here and taking away front grip, you induce understeer, which means you have to be going slower to keep the car to the left, right? So here the limit with how you're driving is maybe 58, 57 miles an hour. But by continuing to keep weight on the front nose here, and I'm not talking about much brake, maybe if it's even just a lift, right? But making sure we don't get to throttle until after the apex point is going to help you roll more speed through this first apex point and still hold it left. And really, the exit here in terms of speed doesn't really matter at all, right? Like I would rather roll a crap ton of entry speed and maybe only get the throttle out over here, because the exit speed doesn't really matter. It's the exit position that really matters. So I want to see you kind of try to work on shifting that brake zone maybe a little bit deeper into turn 3 and carry the brakes deeper through turn 3. And then into 4, we could be a little bit more aggressive. You're a little early with your lift here. And we kind of just, for the most part, coast into turn 4, right? That there's not really much of a brake application. So, where you're coming off and you're going to throttle, not even getting back to full throttle, where you're starting your throttle release is probably where I'm starting to feed the throttle back out of 3. And I might go flat for a really quick little second, and then super light on the brakes coming off the brakes, feed the throttle in turn 4. Throttle is great. Really good exit out of turn 4. I like that. Out of 4 here, I'd like to, I know you're not going to be able to work it very far to the right, but I'd like to see you just try to work it, even if it's just a half car width off the inside here, any little bit more that you can work. Like my hands are coming up and I'm just going to continue to turn right, because that's just every little bit is going to make our brake zone here into turn 5 just that little bit straighter, right? It's not going to ever be a straight brake zone, but the more that you can straighten it out, the slightly less steering input you're going to have in the brake zone, which means the later and harder that you can brake coming up the hill as well. So just work it slightly more to the right here out of 4. And that's going to allow you to attack turn 5 more, because what ends up happening to turn 5 is we overslow a little bit. And now this causes us to pick up throttle too early, right? So you're starting to feed the throttle in here. What did we just talk about in turn 3, right? When you get the throttle, you're taking away off the front nose, you're inducing understeer into the car, and you're right now, your hands and your body are still asking the car to turn. So this is a corner that exit speed does matter, right? So it's the kind of the opposite of turn 3, but I still want my feet and hands working together, right? Because now what's going to happen is you're inducing understeer into the car, and then understeer doesn't let you get back to full throttle until way out over here. I want to see you try to be getting back to full throttle closer to this range here. So let's talk about the reason you're picking up the throttle too early is because we're overslowing corner entry. Right now, your butt's telling you, oh God, I'm too slow. Let me get the throttle. But we want our hands and feet working together. So really what I want you to be really, really focused on right now is where you pick up the throttle needs to be really specific. It needs to come where you're ready to unwind the steering wheel. So in turn 5, I'm waiting. This is where I'm starting to feed the throttle in. And now at this point, by not feeding the throttle in too early, I'm going to have less steering input than you. So I have less understeer, which means I can be back to full throttle in this range, kind of right here. Then what we're going to start to be able to do is once we fix that throttle spot, once we can start to pick up the throttle in the correct area, then we can focus on the overslowing problem correctly. And really what's happening here is we're just not driving it hard enough in here. We could be braking deeper. We could be braking a little bit lighter, getting off the brakes, rolling more speed. And now what's going to happen is you're going to be going faster on the entries, and you're going to get back to full throttle earlier on exit, which means now we're going faster in and faster out by first delaying where we pick up the initial throttle application. And this is going to be the major theme kind of around any racetrack you go to, and especially here at PittRace. So into turn 7, again, when we think about this corner, it's all entry speed, right? It's such a small drive to turn 8. So I want to see you rolling even more speed into turn 7. See how you're already back to throttle here? When I nail turn 7, I pick up throttle after the apex for the first time. I flow a crap ton of speed, and then I also use every inch of the road out over here. This is where our left side tires kind of should be. I want to come out almost all the way to the grass. Maybe I turn it a little bit more to the right before turn 8, but setting up to the right for turn 8 does really no value at all. So tons of speed through 7, use almost all the road. See if you can work it a little bit off the outside back to like a little bit more mid road. What's going to happen again is now you're going to arrive into turn 8 with more speed, which is going to allow you to delay that initial throttle application. Once again, turn 8, you see you're starting to feed the throttle in here, right here. Notice how you're still trying to turn down to the apex point. So you're overslowing turn 7, which is causing you to overslow turn 8. And now that understeer means we don't really get back to full throttle ever. Not once out of turn 8 where you back to full throttle, right? Everywhere that bar just has a little bit. Before I completely say that, let me just make sure that bar is accurate. on the straightaways. Yeah, so the bar is accurate, right? So we never get back to full throttle. So here, coming in, I'm going to arrive in with more speed. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. Bam, feed the throttle in. Wham, back to full throttle, full. And now that you're going to drive it deeper into this right-hander here, because once again, notice how the second you're turning in, you're adding throttle. Now we know we don't want to be doing that, right? So that means I'm overslowing the corner, which means I need to be attacking it later on the brakes, attacking it more on full throttle here, then kind of coming onto the brakes, coming off the brakes, coasting, bam, back to full throttle, full, then lifting, coasting. All right, crack the throttle back in, full throttle, a little bit of a lift. Okay, bam, back to full throttle. Notice how I spent less time on throttle than you in that section, but how I was getting back to full throttle, right? All about getting back to full throttle. And now into the slow right-hander, you're probably going to know what I'm talking about. We're coming in, we're braking, we're starting to turn in. This is where our throttle's coming in. Think to yourself, is this where the throttle should be coming in? No, I'm not ready to unwind the steering wheel, right? I will actually, if anything, want my throttle coming even after the apex point here so that I can hold it to the right a little bit more on corner exit to set up for the next left-hander. So once again here, I'm probably coming off the brakes now. I'm feeding the throttle in here and then getting out. And the second thing as well is, remember how we talked about turn one, how aggressive your throttle application was? Just take a look here, right? Wham! That was really aggressive. A little bit more progression, a little bit later as well. All righty. Did the fast corners for the most part. Really like the way you're driving. That's perfect. Really solid. Through the left sweeper here, I think you're doing a phenomenal job as well. Through the right sweeper coming into the final corner here, I think this actually looks really good for right now. Once again, we're a little early to throttle here. So coming in, we're braking. Where do we get to throttle? Just that tick too early, right? Are we ready to unwind the steering wheel here? No, we're kind of unwinding the steering wheel closer to there. So we can roll in a little bit more speed here. We can delay that throttle, patient. Bam, right here, feed the throttle. And then I'm back to full throttle right now, where you're still at kind of 60% throttle till out over here. The second thing as well is, out of this corner, don't try to run less road, right? Like, it doesn't matter at all if you try to apex here. I would much rather drive an extra meter or two of track length, but be 4 or 5 miles an hour faster. So what I'm telling you here is, you should be really focused on trying to get back to full throttle. And what's stopping you from getting back to full throttle right now is your hands, right? Like, you're trying to turn and you're trying to keep that steering wheel in, but you've got track out over here that you could be using. So right now, you could be unwinding the steering wheel, letting the car be freer, and getting back to full throttle earlier, right? So just have be focused on let the car be free, track out, use all the roads so that you can get back to full throttle versus trying to hold it to the inside here. I might be all the way to the outside of the racetrack now, so tons of time to work it back to the right side of the road. Don't worry about trying to drive less distance. Try to worry about getting back to full throttle. So really focus on where we pick up the throttle, timing that better with our hands and feet, and then be a little bit more progressive, smoother with our throttle applications. That's going to eventually allow us to bring in more entry speed. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions. And yeah, man, we'll keep rocking it.